I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'd like to talk about world predictions and how, as astrologers, we are better able to predict the forthcoming events that we can foresee predicting using astrology. So the most important variable that I like to use as an astrologer for prediction are eclipses. And if you can note the signs, the opposing signs that the eclipses happen in, as well as any planets that may be conjunct these eclipses, any specific fixed stars, and of course the nakshatra that these eclipses are falling in. This will be relative to how you can better understand what to predict in the future. Now remember, I am talking about sidereal Vedic astrology. And this will make such a poignant position because we're better to understand the nakshatras through prediction. The nakshatras are the portions of the zodiac that will better predict what I'm about to tell you. So looking at these eclipses falling in these opposing signs, we have a solar eclipse, 2 eclipses twice a year, 6 months apart. And I'm talking about the solar eclipse because there is a lunar eclipse that occurs 2 weeks before or 2 weeks after the solar eclipse. But the solar eclipse is the focal point, and there are just 2 a year, always in opposing signs. Now Rahu and Ketu, which are the determinants of destiny and fate in our lives as well in global affairs, these are what cause eclipses, because eclipses are simply when the sun and the moon align with Rahu or Ketu, the north or south node of the moon. So going back in history, looking at some of the most treacherous events that have occurred before, I am looking back to where the eclipses occurred each year. Now Rahu and Ketu have a cycle of 18 and a half years that they make a complete revolution through all 12 signs. So curiously, if you want to go back and see what was happening 18 and a half years ago, this will help you better understand what this eclipse pattern and energy will produce now in this day and age, as well as looking into the future. So going backwards in time, going back to some of the most treacherous events that happened in history, the first one that comes to mind was the bombing of Hiroshima. And during this time, Rahu was in Gemini and Ketu was in Sagittarius. And Saturn was influencing this eclipse by Saturn being with Rahu. And this was one of the most destructive times in human history. Yes, it did end World War II, but my God, the human destruction and the war and the sadness and the sorrow that these events create are reminiscent of where Rahu and Ketu are at these times, because not only is Rahu in the sign of Gemini and Ketu in the sign of Sagittarius, but Rahu is in the nakshatra Ardra. And Ardra symbol is a teardrop, and the god that rules Ardra is Rudra, the howling winds, the storm god. So this creates emotion, storm, sadness, tears. Ardra is the nakshatra that I associate with tragedy and tragic events. And when we go to the opposing point in the zodiac, in Sagittarius, we come to the nakshatra called Mula. And Mula's god that rules Mula is Nariti, goddess of destruction. And in this nakshatra, you'll find, which is 0 degrees of Sagittarius to 13 degrees 20 minutes, where K2 was during the most destructive events in world history, we have the galactic center in this portion of Sagittarius. 0 Sag to 13 degrees 20 minutes, around 2 to 3 degrees is the galactic center, where we have this most massive black hole that sucks in the energy and goes through this transformation. But you find that our galaxy in the Milky Way revolves around the galactic center, where this huge black holes and huge, dark, powerful energy resides. So as you see, this point is a deep, dark point in the zodiac. And what you're going to find is whenever we have Rahu in K2, Rahu in Ardra, and K2 in Mula, the most destructive things in all of history have occurred. First example is the bombing of Hiroshima. Another example is the assassination of President Kennedy. That was when Rahu was in Ardra and K2 was in Mula. Sagittarius, Gemini. Another destructive event that all of us will never forget in our lifetime was the attack of September 11th, 2001. Rahu was in Ardra, conjunct Jupiter, and K2 was in Mula, conjunct Mars. And I might mention that generally the United States of America is involved in this. Why? Because the chart for the United States is hooked up to Gemini and Sag, Ardra, and Mula, because there are 4 planets in the sign of Gemini, as well as the ascendant for the United States chart that I use, Independence Day, July 4th, 1776, 6:30 p.m. in Philadelphia. So when we see these planetary configurations with the nodes come around, we know that the world is due for destruction and transformation. And so with the trend of world events right now, where are we headed? Because I'm looking at the summer now in 2017 as things will heat up. As the nodes are coming together, they are in Leo, but they will shift by September, and there will be an eclipse in August. And after that, a shift in September that is very treacherous. Things will start to heat up. In July, in late July, you're going to find that the Sun and Mars come together. And this always heats up for dangerous events, because the Sun conjuncted Mars on the day of the Boston Marathon bombing. And this summer, things are going to start to heat up and be more violent. And then I see a trend of events all the way occurring through the year and into the end of 2019. December 26th, there is a solar eclipse that looks more treacherous than all the others before, because this solar eclipse is going to involve Saturn, Jupiter, K2, Pluto, Mercury, and of course, when we have the eclipse, we have the Sun and the Moon. So all of these planets are going to converge together in the sign of Sagittarius, in the nakshatra Mula, destruction. Opposite that, we have Rahu in Ardra. And let me tell you, this looks so treacherous, because every time we have Saturn aspecting Pluto, there is a breakdown of the governments and the controls that rule the world. So think about it. right before, in 2001, September 11th, we had Saturn opposing Pluto, breakdowns of the worlds and the controls that the world is based on. Now we're going to have Saturn with Jupiter, conjunct K2 with Pluto, complete breakdown of world events. Because so much is building, so much is growing, and this is the evolvement of what we have that's building now. This is the pattern of what's to come. So when I look at these events and I know where the trends are headed, one of the things that I want to say is we have to see if we can change what is causing it so that we can better avert the things that could possibly occur. Because do I think that things have to happen? No, I think we have free will. And that is what I want you to be aware of, to look within and change. Now, another thing that is a very important tool in prediction, as I said, we're using eclipses, but when we have a solar eclipse, that point, that degree is a mark, like a landmine, that lays dormant till another planet crosses over that point. And you see, September 11, 2001, that's exactly what happened. Mars crossed over the point of the previous eclipse degree. So we had an eclipse a few months before September 11th, and that degree that the solar eclipse occurred on, transiting Mars, crossed over on that day, September 11th, 2001. So looking at this trend of events on the eclipse of December 26, 2019, Mars will cross over that degree marking in February of 2020. That date will be approximately February 21st through the 22nd. Mars will hit that point of the previous solar eclipse degree. That is 10 degrees of Sagittarius. So when Mars crosses 10 degrees of Sagittarius, something big will happen. And let me make reference to that Mars is conjunct K2 at this point, and Rahu is in Gemini, in Ardra. So this is reminiscent of September 11th, but even bigger and more powerful. Now, looking at the sign of Sagittarius, where this is all transforming and happening at the galactic center, remember that Sagittarius is the sign that deals with fundamentalism, spirituality, religiousness, and people that can be fanatical. So this is the point in the juncture where everything comes to a head. Another thing is the nakshatra that follows. Mula is Purva Ashada, which many say deals with declarations of war. So the trend of events is heating up. It's coming to this crescendo around this time, the end of 2019 to 2020. And I want you to know that this is the trend and the probability, but if we can pull it together as a humanity and stop the hate, stop the war, and this starts within your own individual life. Let me remind you, you can't control the masses, but you can control yourself. And I want people to recognize that we have to come together as a humanity and not be against everyone. And if you think that world leaders are the cause and the reason for what's going on, think again, because the world leaders are simply a reflection of the masses and the people. The people are the ones that put these people or somehow allow this to happen and the power to take over. So you cannot blame any leader in any country. This is a global thing happening in the world. The emotions, the people, the planets, the stars are all reflecting what trends are transpiring. And the presidential leaders all over the world are a reflection of what's going on within the people. So from that vantage point, we have to look within, look with how we can come together and not be in such a polarity, not be so polarizing, and be more compassionate, understanding, and be one with each other. Because the more we're at odds with each other, the more we're going to escalate what is brewing and transforming at this time. So please, look at how you can change yourself and do not be so opposed and angry to others. Let's pull together so that we can change the course of history and time and make this world a much better place. So with that, if you would like to learn more about me, you can go to my website, which is galacticcenter.org. And if you would like to learn Vedic astrology, I have a university, University of Vedic Astrology.com. And for transcripts, written transcripts about this material, you can always go to my magazine, which is astrologicmagazine.com. Thank you.